On February 5, 2024, a tragic accident happened. Two lovers had died. The sound of sirens blared through the midnight air as neighbors gathered around the house, their faces filled with horror as paramedics carted away the lifeless bodies of Sarah and John. The house was sealed shut, but the neighbors could still vividly recall the raised voices, the shattering of plates, and a cry for help from the apartment. The entire neighborhood knew their relationship was toxic, but no one dared to suggest they seek professional help. The question on everyone's mind was, could this tragic incident have been avoided? Their story is just one of many toxic relationships that end badly. Why do we find ourselves addicted to toxic people? And why do we attract them, whether consciously or unconsciously? Toxic relationships often lack a solid foundation. They begin with intense attraction, where the other person consumes all your time, emotions, and resources. We're drawn to an idealized version of who someone should be rather than who they truly are. At the start of such relationships, a toxic individual creates a false sense of security. They convince you of their sincerity and project an idealized image that doesn't reflect their true self. We become enamored with this projected persona rather than the actual person. These emotions send signals to the brain, triggering the release of addictive hormones that create feelings of attachment. We find ourselves craving affection and attention, becoming addicted to dopamine rushes, a phenomenon often referred to as love hits. However, when conflicts arise and their facade begins to crack, we struggle to accept that the charming person we fell for isn't who they truly are. Our emotions become a roller coaster. Highs feel euphoric, while the lows are devastatingly low. We may strive to restore the person to their pedestal, hoping they'll go back to the idealized version we once loved. The problem is, they never were that person to begin with. This lack of realization traps us in a vicious cycle, leading to unrecognized and unhealed emotional trauma. Toxic persons often play many mind games with their victims, making it difficult to keep a grip on reality. A key sign that a person is toxic is their inconsistent behaviors. They may sometimes be caring and considerate, but other times they can be narcissistic, distant, and cruel. When one partner is toxic, this inconsistent cycle creates a trauma bond. A trauma bond is a deep attachment to someone who physically and/or emotionally abuses you. It's like being intensely addicted to the intermittent cycle of reward and punishment. Imagine feeling deeply attached to someone who often mistreats you or undermines your well-being. On one hand, you know their actions are hurting you. On the other hand, you cherish the positive moments you once had and hope that things will change. While it may seem crazy that someone would continue to stay in a toxic relationship, it's much more difficult to walk away from a toxic relationship than from a healthy one. Toxic persons diminish your sense of self and make it hard to trust your own judgment. This creates a codependency on your toxic partner, and you struggle to break free from the relationship and them. You know, cognitive dissonance can really mess with your head when you're dealing with toxic people. This thing was figured out by psychologist Leon Festinger back in 1957. It happens when your actions don't line up with your own values and beliefs. It's like holding on to two completely conflicting beliefs at the same time. When you're stuck with a toxic person, it's like you're constantly grappling with how they can be loving one minute and hurtful the next. You get hooked on their inconsistency, and that's what keeps you stuck in that cycle. To cope with the discomfort, your mind starts making excuses for their behavior. You might start telling yourself that they didn't mean to hurt you, or that their good qualities outweigh their bad ones. It's a way of convincing yourself that the relationship is worth holding on to. But let's face it, those kinds of behaviors aren't healthy, and they definitely aren't love. Psychology tells us that a history of toxic relationships with our parents often leads us to attract men and women who recreate that familiar toxic cycle. It all starts with how we're raised and the kind of relationship we develop with our parents. If our parents provided us with the care and love we needed to feel safe and validated, this foundation grows with us into adulthood, helping us avoid abusive or toxic relationships. However, if we grow up with parents who were emotionally unavailable, abusive, or inconsistent, we might look for those familiar patterns in our adult relationships. Similarly, if we had a parent who was overly critical and controlling, we may end up attracting partners who are also manipulative and controlling. We've nurtured an emotional craving for that familiarity, which prevents us from developing proper self-esteem, self-love, and a positive self-image. The fear of loneliness. Humans are creatures of habit. We find comfort in familiarity and often dread the thought of starting over. Many people fear not having anyone else to turn to. The routine and companionship a relationship provides can feel safer than facing the unknown loneliness, even if the relationship is toxic. The familiar emotional pain can seem better than the comforting peace we haven't yet experienced. Dr. Rebecca Adams suggests that the fear of loneliness can deeply influence our decisions in a relationship. We might rely on the toxic person for emotional support or personal validation, making it hard to imagine life without them. External factors like societal norms or pressure from friends and family can also affect our decision to stay or leave. Now that we know why they're addictive, how can we break free? The first step in breaking free from a toxic person is recognizing cognitive dissonance. By acknowledging these conflicting feelings and understanding their root causes, we can start making healthier choices for our mental well-being. Set boundaries. Establish clear physical, emotional, and mental boundaries for all the important relationships in your life. Don't compromise just because you feel pressured. Put yourself first. Understand that you're not in love with the real person, you're in love with an illusion. Take time away from the relationship to reflect on yourself and why you chose to be with this person. Forgive yourself for accepting poor treatment and allow yourself the time you need to heal. Cut all forms of communication. Like a drug addict who needs to quit completely, you need to cut all ties with a toxic person because your body has linked them to strong emotions, making it harder to move on. Staying in touch or spending time together will only make it harder to let go and might pull you back into the bad relationship. This is why people in unhealthy romantic relationships often break up and get back together repeatedly. It might seem like things are improving, but in the long run, they always go back to being bad. To truly move on, stop all contact and give yourself time to heal. Talk to someone. Confide in a trusted friend or family member and let them know what you're going through. An objective perspective helps you see what's really happening. They can also help you cope with loneliness by providing emotional support. In the pursuit of healthier connections, breaking free from toxicity requires recognizing your own worth. It takes courage and self-awareness. By nurturing self-respect and self-love, you pave the way toward genuine happiness and fulfillment. Let us know in the comments your experience with a toxic person. Thanks for watching and subscribe for more.